Chapter 8. The Timucuans. The first night in Florida breathed 100 shades of blue and black over the French encampment upon the sand. Their hammocks swayed between the palm trees, where 1,000 pinpricks of silky moonlight dripped through a shelter of canvas above. And as one holding a vigil through the night, La Trinity sat just offshore, her mast and sail silhouetted by the starlit horizon beyond. Marcel wiggled in his hammock. After 2 months at sea, falling asleep wasn't easy without the bobbing of a ship to help. His every muscle and bone had come to crave the ups and downs of the open water. Still, at least there was the sound of waves, endlessly announcing themselves as they sloshed into shore, and that seemed to help settle his mind. Always the waves arrived, without ever really getting anywhere, and from where the waves came, who could tell? Well, the thought was enough to put him over. The boy was out. Morning stretched out its purple veil. Marcel was about to stretch out too, when a turn of his hammock flipped him off into the sand. Marcel rolled over and found Tristan standing over him. With a mischievous smile, he was gearing up for a body slam. "You gonna sleep all day, or what?" "Wait!" Marcel winced with a laugh. Okay, please." He shuffled to his feet, narrowly escaping the threat of getting smushed. I'll get ready." "Well, hurry up." The pair stumbled over to the shallows. Marcel bent over and scooped up the morning waves. He splashed his face and rubbed the salt water over his chest and arms. A tingle went down his spine, and the boy shivered himself dry. "Captain says we're going out exploring today," said Tristan. "The River King even lent us a few warriors to be our guides. They're going to help find the best spot for our haven, and as soon as we find it, we can start putting up a fort." "Now just a minute, cadet." Rene sifted through the draping tents of the camp and drew near. "Marcel won't be going anywhere, at least not out exploring in a workboat anyway. He's to remain behind until further notice." Marcel rubbed an arm. Did I do something wrong, Commander?" "Au contraire," Rene smiled. "It's something we need you to do." "Me?" "We, you, and only you. Our supplies are running low, and it's time you went out hunting." "Just how bad is it, Commander?" "Well, if we stopped eating right now, we'd probably have just enough food to get us back to France. But that would make for some very hungry weeks while we're here in Florida. So we're counting on you to be out in the woods just about every day from now on. Deer, fowl, whatever you can find. We won't be picky so long as we can eat it." "I'm happy to help feed everybody, Commander. But it's not easy hauling in a deer by myself. I can do it, but the work will go a lot quicker with a second pair of hands. Especially if we're running out of food as fast as you say." "Very well," said Rene. "You can have Tristan to help you. The sergeant is in charge of guarding the camp anyway, and he'll be pleased when I tell him his son is staying behind too." "Oh, but..." Tristan forgot his place. "I was going to be on a workboat today." "Then a workboat you shall have," Rene smirked. "Since you're so inclined. 3 of them, to be exact. Now both of you follow me and I'll show you." Rene led the boys to 3 beached workboats on the shore. "These 3 are to serve as spares for the time being, and will need some looking after. So each day after breakfast, see to it every slime and barnacle is scraped from their holes." Hot coals might as well have been the boys' cheeks, and they both avoided eye contact with the other. "Ahem," said Rene. Marcel and Tristan quickly changed their tune, at least for the moment, and saluted. "Oui, Commander." Rene grinned. "Well, boys, I wish you both happy hunting. But first," he handed each of them a wooden bucket draped with a rag and jangling with a scraper inside. It had been a cool morning, but already the boys felt heat start to settle into their skin as the one blamed the other for their misfortune. The boys brooded their way through breakfast without so much as a word the whole time. Marcel wanted to say something nasty, something along the lines of how angry he was that Tristan got him dragged into scraping boats every morning. But Marcel held his tongue. As mad as he was deep down, he knew Tristan was feeling something the same. left out of the exploring and forced to stay behind. After breakfast, the boys wasted no time. Together, they leaned over the first workboat, squatted down beside, and started careening its hull. There really wasn't much to it. Up until the day before, the boat had been stored aboard La Trinity, well away from any seawater. Even so, a day's worth of mucky buildup and all the caked-on salt was enough to teach their arms the meaning of elbow grease. At chore's end, it was Marcel who broke silence first. "You still mad at me?" "I guess not," said Tristan. And he flung a gooey strand of seaweed at the nose of his friend. Marcel defended himself with bits of seashell as the one chased the other round the hull. Tristan jumped on top of the overturned vessel, hoping to catch a lead. Marcel screeched to a halt, skinning his knee without a care, and above, the boat groaned and teetered until sand, hull, and boy tumbled into the surf. Marcel pointed at his sopping wet friend and let out a squeal. That was when Tristan went for his ankles and pinned him to the waves, just long enough to make sure Marcel got as soaked the same as he was. Sooner than the Florida sun could dry them off, Left Ear returned from the nearby forest and paid the boys a visit. He challenged Marcel and Tristan to another race, this time through the shallows. They made a game of it to hop over the knee-deep breakers as they rolled into shore. If one failed to jump a wave, they were out of the race. They splashed and dodged along the surf until each of their legs gave out in the rolling tide, and then moved on to something else, as youths always do. "Left Ear," signed Marcel. "We go hunt now. You come with us. We look for deer." Left Ear searched Marcel up and down, and reached behind him as well. "Where is deer?" Marcel shook his head. "No deer here. I have to go shoot one, out there, in the woods." Left Ear didn't seem to understand, as he brushed Marcel's head and shoulders. "But where is your deer?" Marcel wrinkled his nose at Tristan. "I'm confused." Tristan scratched his tawny head. "Me too." A little more short-tempered this time, Marcel repeated, "We don't have the deer yet. We have to go into the woods and get one." Left Ear finally seemed to understand. He signed, "Wait here for me. I go with you to hunt. I bring 3 deers for you, and me." And he darted across the beach and into the forest. The boys waited, patiently at first, but as the minutes went on into an hour, with Left Ear nowhere in sight, Marcel and Tristan wondered if they should just go on without him. But at last he returned, sprinting out from the foliage. He came bearing 3 deer skins, each with the nose, ears, antlers, and even the hooves still attached. "Here is your deer." He tossed one to Marcel, and then one to Tristan. Left Ear then showed the boys how to wear the skins, and he started to walk around like a deer. "You see now? To find deer, you must be deer. With this, we can sneak up close on deer and shoot." "Oh, so that's what he meant this whole time," said Marcel to Tristan. "Come on, let's go try it out and see if it works." He grabbed up his gear, but Left Ear stopped Marcel from bringing along his quiver. No. Instead, the youth selected a single arrow and presented it to Marcel. Just one. Hunting the native way required one rule, and that was the rule of one arrow. Left Ear didn't need to sign anything more for Marcel to pick up on the meaning. Hunter to hunter, the boy knew what was meant. If there was one good thing Baird ever taught him, it was that there was no second chances in hunting. If a first shot wasn't confident enough to take down an animal, then it should have never been taken at all. A second or third shot would only be cruel to the beast and bring shame to one's skill as a hunter. And so Marcel left his quiver behind. Deep in the woods they went, and the hunt began. The 3 boys crouched low with the skins strapped on at their limbs. Like a herd of deer they stalked. The forest bought the lie from every bird and squirrel that failed to scurry at their sight. Every so often, Left Ear would give off a snort or a beastly wheeze. He'd grunt so loudly, his echo would bounce off the tree trunks before disappearing into the brush. It was a deer call. He then rattled a pair of broken antlers, imitating the noise of two bucks locked in battle. The forest returned his noise with a thick, hearty bellow. The prize was close. By the running waters of a spring, the boys sighted him. He was tall and immovable, with the weight of pure muscle in every press of his hoof. Marcel eyed the spread of the buck's rack. There were 14 points in all. Left Ear signed to Marcel to get into position, and he and Tristan split off. The native youth bellied out another snort wheeze and stuck up his deer-costumed head. That got the buck's attention, all right. The hair of the giant's spine crested down to his tail, tingling straight up. He would tolerate no rival. The deer blurted out a snort and a wheeze himself, and the might of his lungs shook Marcel to the bone. Tristan began to sweat, never before so afraid for his life against another animal. Through a veil of palmetto leaves, Marcel drew back his one arrow and found a clear line of sight. Left Ear called again. The buck pulled back his ears and returned the grunt, imploring his adversary to stand down. The youth let out one last taunt and the buck charged. His strength powered through the waters with such force, Tristan could feel the droplets splash all the way from his cover. Marcel timed his target and let loose. His arrow flung straight and true. The buck fell into the pebbled waters with such a terrible crash, for a moment the waters receded at his weight. The beast let out a ferocious groan, but his heart was pierced through and failing him. The fresh spring glowed red with his blood. The beast tilted its gaze toward an opening in the tree boughs above. The boy scrambled over, and Marcel watched the light leave his eyes as the buck turned to look into his. And the buck saw his last. It was over. Left Ear placed a hand to the buck's hot, steaming hide to pay his respects. Marcel did the same. The youth then began to hum some native chant, and Marcel took it as his cue to kiss the pendant of St. Hubert at his neck and pray. Then, with a wild grin, Left Ear gestured for Marcel to make the first cut, as it was his right with the kill being his. So Marcel gripped the hilt of his hunting knife, puffed a deep breath as Tristan patted him on the back, and he dug in. Nothing was left to waste. Tristan, who was not used to the sight of, well, fresh meat, went with Left Ear to forage for supplies among the trees. Everything they'd need the forest would provide. They cut down magnolia boughs, shaved off fibers of bark, and gathered some alocasia leaves as big as themselves. When they returned, Marcel secured his gutted prize to a freshly cut pole branch. The rest of the buck was packed onto the great leaves. The boys wrapped the innards and such into leafy bundles tied over with strings of peeled bark. After they secured each bundle onto a smaller pole, and with their deer costumes rolled into packs, the three boys hauled away. Left Ear took the lead, bearing the bigger pole with the buck, while Marcel took its rear. Tristan was left with a smaller pole, the one with the guts and everything else. With a grimace on his face, followed by a reluctant sniff, Tristan lifted up the pole onto his shoulders like an ox to a yoke, balancing the middle of its weight upon the nape of his neck. It had taken at least an hour to get where they were, and the hike back to camp was going to feel a whole lot longer with all that extra weight. "Shortcut," signed Left Ear. "Fast trail. Back to water and sand." Marcel shrugged at Tristan in more or less agreement. "Sounds good to me." He signed back to Left Ear. "Lead the way." Rather than trudging through the deep underbrush, Left Ear's shortcut led the boys into a wide clearing in the forest. It brimmed with crops of corn and vast gardens of fruits and vegetables. Fields were arrayed in a circular pattern, with a grove of old-growth trees at its center. One oak stood out from the rest, as it served as a sort of watchtower, but to a couple of French boys, it looked more like a tree fort than a tower. In the fields, there were natives busy with the spring planting and harvesting. They waved at Left Ear as he passed by, exclaiming something cheerful about the deer and the presence of two strangers. But Left Ear, with a puffed-up chest, merely kept on marching past them. It occurred to the boys that this shortcut, whether it was actually shorter or not, was really just Left Ear's way of showing off to the other natives. Left Ear brought them to a row of wild vines, teeming with clusters of yellow-green grapes, and signaled it was time for a break in the shade. Their heavy burdens set aside, the boys sat crisscrossed as Left Ear plucked off a weighty cluster from one of the vines and tossed it over. Marcel plopped one of the fat, juicy orbs into his mouth. The grape was sweet as honey and refreshingly tart in the sweltering heat. Though it wasn't as firm as grapes in France. That's not to say it was mushy. No, it was melty smooth to his tongue, textured only by the inner seeds by which Marcel, being a boy, made it a game against the other two as to who could spit out the seeds the farthest. As the boys enjoyed the shade from the midday sun, which wrung the sweat from their pores more than usual, their ears twitched at a strange music sifting its way through the fields. Its melody was low, like a hum or a chant. "That sound," Marcel signed to Left Ear. "The music. It's," he pretended to shiver, "creepy." Left Ear scowled a peek through the gardens, listening. "Not our song," he signed. "Not river song. It is song of Olata. He is here." Burrump, burrump, burrum. A horn sounded from the oak tree watchtower. Burrump, burrump, burrum. "My people call for warriors," signed Left Ear. "I go to help. You stay here." He hurried off, joining up with another man, who threw the youth a spear. Alone, Marcel and Tristan tucked their legs into their chests, keeping themselves out of sight in the shadow of vines and grapes. "What do you think?" asked Marcel. "Should we get out there and help him?" "With what? One measly arrow?" "I've got my hunting knife, and we've got the woods," said Marcel. "That's all we need. I can make us a couple spears out of some sticks in no time." The strange music rang louder, clear enough to make out a whole army humming their way toward them from every direction. "I don't think we'll be going back into the woods any time soon," said Tristan. "I think we're surrounded." "Then we'll look for stuff lying around, anything we can use as a weapon." "But, Marcel, it's not our fight. You remember what Captain Ribault said to the River King. He doesn't want us taking sides with the natives." "That's different," said Marcel. "Captain Ribault didn't want to go looking for a fight, but we've just been dropped right in the middle of one." A new sound broke out, drowning out the hair-raising tune. It was a mix between a battle cry and a flying shriek, the clash of wood and the whistle of arrows. And if the screaming and fighting was any proof, there was no escape for those caught in the song's circle. "Listen," said Marcel. "I know what Ribault said, but what's the point in making friends at all if we can't help them out when they need it?" Tristan wiped off a trickle of sweat beads, leaking into his eyes. "Okay," he said, standing up. "Let's go find some weapons." But the fight had ceased, at least for the moment. The forest and the clearing lay still. From the stillness rose a rhythmic clatter, like clubs being banged into tree trunks. The sound of war drums followed, the booms of which Marcel and Tristan felt all the way in the deep hollows of their bellies. Left Ear came hobbling back, his nostrils flaring with every painful step. There was an arrow stuck in the calf muscle, and a stream of blood flowed down to his ankle. He fell to the earth, exhausted, and the boys rushed to his side and dragged him into the shade. "Do not worry about me," signed Left Ear. "You, go hide." "We want to help," signed Tristan. "No help," signed Left Ear. "Only hide. Run for Watchtower Tree. Go up. Hide." "We go together," signed Marcel. "No," signed Left Ear. "I stay. Rest. Warriors from River King come soon. They will help, but you must hide." A wild gust of breeze shook the air, but it was not the wind. Arrows had been let loose. Enemy arrows. "Run!" Left Ear signed with a push of the hand. "Run!" The boys sprinted, leaving Left Ear, the prize buck, and everything else behind, only taking with them Marcel's bow at his back. A dark rain was the arrows, shining in the sky with their tips of animal teeth and white bone. The boys darted across the wide clearing, racing against the wave of whistling death. Out of instinct, as the arrows came down, Marcel and Tristan raised their forearms above their heads, though little use it would be if an arrow found its way. Busting through a row of corn, the boys at last arrived at the grove of trees at the clearing's center. The tree branches served as a natural shelter as the arrows jutted down here and there across the fields. For now, Marcel and Tristan were safe. The boys stumbled over to the watchtower tree. It was an old oak, looking only half alive and missing more than half its branches. At the base of its trunk was a pitch-black hollow, a sort of doorway the boys could duck through. Inside, the two boys found a vile heat trapped within the tree's hollow. Its darkness was a humid oven. It stole the breath from their lungs and sucked the sweat from their skin, as if every pore was a spout of running water. Yet a beam of gold light promised fresh air above. Beckoning them up to reach it was an old rope ladder twisting with vines. Up the swinging ladder the boys went, disturbing a cloud of tree dust and catching a cobweb or two in their hair. Higher and higher they climbed, as the ropes gave their complaint with every touch. At the top, they found a sort of hatch made of sticks. Tristan swung it open as they both scampered through, finding themselves in a room about the size of a captain's cabin. The watchtower had been built into the upper limbs of the tree, and its room was enclosed by 3 stony walls and a thatched roof above. The fourth side, the back side, was an open balcony, which faced the other trees right behind. The room was freshly abandoned, with its sole occupant, the guard, likely having left to help protect the fields after sounding the alarm. He had left behind what looked like a basket of nuts and some dried meat. While the guard had already eaten the better part of it, there were still enough crumbs for the boys to pick through and share, but the tiny morsels only served to tease their stomachs and anger a hunger worse than if they had not touched the scraps at all. The boys rushed over to a large opening, a sort of window in the forward wall. From the heights of its view, they caught sight of the tippity tops of the cornstalks beginning to waver and shake, while 100 dark shapes passed through their midst. It was Olata and his Timucuans, and, coming to meet him, a line of reinforcements from the River King edged in from the forest. A battle was about to begin. The Timucuans stormed forth with their faces painted red, and their muscles plated with gold and silver. The loincloth warriors of the River King hollered against them, and the two forces clashed beneath the boiling sun. It was a chaos of mud and gashes, of heat and blood. Clubs lined with shark teeth hacked into ligaments and bone. Spears and knives competed for damage, be it a slice to the shoulder or a stab to the gut. And arrows swarmed everywhere, as relentless as a hornet's nest toward an uninvited guest. But the River King's men were no match against Olata's army, with his warriors fastened with scales of armor like reptiles of silver and gold. When the fighting finally stopped and the stragglers made their retreat, Marcel and Tristan realized something horrible. Stuck up there in that old watchtower, they were all that remained.